Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. We are buzzing as always, and I'm super pumped to have today's guest on the show, Rebecca Liao, CEO of Saga and an advisor to Sommelier Protocol, where she is designing their DAO. She's also the co-founder, advisor, and former COO at Skuchain, a currency agnostic blockchain for global trade. Before Skuchain, she was director of business development and head of Asia for Globality, a Softbank-backed B2B unicorn for AI-powered procurement of professional services. I think one of the first big politics people on the show today as well. She was also a member of President Biden's 2020 presidential campaign, where she helped advise on China, tech, and Asia economic policy. That is so cool. I can't wait to get into that. And also served on Secretary Clinton's foreign policy team for her 2016 presidential campaign. Also has written for the New York Times, Financial Times, Foreign Affairs, Bloomberg, you name it, and is also a fellow at the Stanford Program in Law, Science, and Technology, where she focuses on tech policy. Wow, out of breath after that bio. Rebecca, pumped to have you on the show. Welcome. Let's get into this. Super pumped to have you.
Great to be here.
Let's jump right into it. Before we get into the crypto stuff, again, super cool bio. We're 360 plus episodes in and can't recall anyone who's worked that high up with the government. So, and I'm as a Canadian, we're so involved with your guys' politics. I mean, we pretty much care about your politics more than ours. Your political news is like before ours on our friggin' news shows. It's just stay la vie. You're our big brother. You're our big sister. It's how it works. How did you get into this? How did you get into the political sphere? What was it like working for Joe Biden and his team? I'm sure you had some interactions with Joe himself. Any cool stories, anything and everything you got for us from your time working with Hillary and Joe? We'd love to hear all the best stories you got.
Yeah, well, Matt, thanks so much for having me on. It's funny because a lot of my concentration in politics is in foreign policy, and so I hear that a lot from people. Is when I go to different countries, they're like, "We actually know more about your news than our news from our own country." Or what's even more embarrassing is we know more about your news than you do. Which is true.
Goodness.
Sometimes Americans don't quite know what's going on in our own country and civic life. But no, it was an honor of a lifetime to serve in both the Biden and Clinton campaigns, two presidential campaigns at this point. And so it's been a journey. But I got started honestly because I began my career as a lawyer, actually. So I was a corporate lawyer for about 5 years, but I always knew that I wanted to go into startups. Yep. I went to Stanford undergrad and was hugely inspired by the technology space here and wanted to become an entrepreneur in my own right, but I had to find the right opportunity for it. But law school is really where I started to enter into civic life in a very serious way. And I remember back in 2014, I want to say, around 2014. So it was a 5-year reunion for all of us at Harvard Law. And I remember talking to my classmates about how the 2016 campaign was shaping up. Obviously, a lot of people were very jazzed about how the Obama administration had shaken out. And They were thinking, oh, we're just going to continue this. So 2016, it was Secretary Clinton's turn. Let's put it that way. It was her turn in the party to be at bat. She had already been a strong candidate in 2008, but the Obama magic is something you can't really compete with.
No, can't beat Obama.
Right. So 2016 was her time, and people began to ask, and that's honestly how a lot of our political journeys start, is we're just asked. So people knew that I was a China analyst, that I was reading and writing a lot in this space, that I was becoming known as a China watcher. I obviously had the expertise in the legal realm and in the tech realm. And so they said, hey, given that skill set, would you potentially be interested in helping out on the campaign? I had never considered being on a political campaign before. I didn't even really know how campaigns were structured. I more or less knew how government institutions were structured just because of my legal education. But in terms of campaigns, I had no idea. But campaigns are the best.
Rebecca, I still don't know how the whole friggin' thing works.
So I put it this way, and this is probably useful for your listeners to hear, especially for this time around. So there are two kinds of presidential campaigns. So there are general campaigns where the incumbent is no longer running. And that means that you are going to have to stand up a whole campaign infrastructure that more or less mimics the government. So you have staff that has specialties in different subject matters, massive policy organizations, and including political organizations that are going to be responsible for getting out the vote, doing all the field work. That's for a general election. Now, for re-election campaigns, which until 90 days ago, we were in one, is where you have an incumbent who's running. And when you have an incumbent, you don't necessarily need to stand up that kind of campaign infrastructure because you have an entire administration of surrogates to help you. So there was no need for most of us to get back into it, but things have changed. And now it's sort of a hybrid. It's the first time anything like this has really happened where the incumbent decides, okay, I'm going to hand things over to my VP. So the administration is still heavily involved, as you can see from the surrogates, from the Biden-Harris administration coming out in the airwaves and the media really pushing our messaging. But at the same time, the Harris campaign has some ideas of its own. So it's been a super exciting journey. And campaigns are really well suited for me personally. 2021, I was going through the nomination confirmation process for a role in the administration. But serving in federal bureaucracy is very, very different from serving on a campaign. And a campaign, it is very fast-paced. It's a very agile environment. Every day, there's something new to tackle. And for someone who comes from early-stage startups, that is the perfect environment in which to get involved. Bureaucracy moves a lot more slowly. There's a lot of activity, but not a lot of effect, honestly. There's not a whole lot of impact that you actually have.
Quick question here, Rebecca. Could you, as someone as busy as you, and I hate putting words in people's mouth, but there's no way you could do what you currently do and work on. Can you do both? Is there enough hours? Is there enough hours in the day there?
Yeah. It's a great question. So I think particularly this time around, I had to be very, very clear about what the potential time commitment would be. Definitely 2016, 2020, I had a little bit more time on my hands. But as CEO of a protocol, nothing is not your problem. Everything is your problem. And my number one priority is Saga. So I was very clear this time around what I can do. And honestly, it's a very different kind of campaign. You probably see that it is very, very media-centric. It always is, but especially so this time around. I think for the Harris campaign, what they figured is, okay, we have a 90-day runway. And 90 days is not a whole lot of time to introduce new policy positions, let's say, or new heavy substantive things that people need to spend time diving into. It is a media blitz until election day. And so a lot of the resources, the focus has been on making sure that she's got her social media game on point, and she definitely does. And that when it comes to having surrogates or even the candidate herself across the airwaves, that they do a good job really pushing the message. So very different kind of campaign that we're running this time around. And I think it's making people think a little bit. In Canada with a parliamentary system, certainly in other countries where you have shorter election cycles, I think you're used to sort of this media blitz where you have a more limited campaign timeframe, which I think can be beneficial in many ways. Here stateside, we tend to draw out the process for a long time.
It's more dineros. It's a money printer. It's a money printer.
I think the advertisers are like, no, we don't want to give up that revenue. But honestly, I think for the perspective of the public, they're like, what difference does it make? After a few months, I get to know you as a candidate, and I more or less have made up my mind. So, it's a very exciting time.
Why, and maybe they have it, but why hasn't the Harris administration slid in your DMs or given you a call, send you an email being like, hey, she not only knows about Asian policy and economics and foreign policy and all that really important stuff, she knows crypto too. That's something that we got to get our ducks in a row. Like, have you been in touch with them? Would you like to advise on the crypto side of the Harris administration? For a lot of, heck, I would assume the majority of the listeners of this pod, at least, no shit, are single issue voters in many ways, like, any interest in that?
Yeah. So you're never quite out of the game. And for me, there will come a time when I'll say more on this. But yes, I have been helping out on the campaign. And it's honestly, it's interesting because people who are in crypto know me primarily as co-founder and CEO at Saga.
Yep.
But people who are in the Democratic Party or in government, they know me primarily as a foreign policy wonk. So yeah, totally different identity.
Two different Rebeccas, two different
Two different
personalities.
Rebeccas, two totally different Rebeccas. And honestly, when I get pinged for this campaign, it's really on foreign policy issues. Now, granted, they understand that I, was a three-time entrepreneur, that I've been in technology for a very long time. In addition to just straight foreign policy work, I do a lot on national security policy now as well, especially the intersection between defense and our technology industry. And so they know that, the two worlds are starting to meld. But having said that, I still advise a lot on China, on national security, defense, and they're starting to hear more from me about technology as well. And there is a reason for that. When I look at how crypto can be most effective across, any administration, but with any policymaker, this is probably going to ring true, is you want to scratch the itch. This is just like sales 101, right? You want to fill the need to provide the value that people are most desperately looking for. And, I hate to break it to the crypto crowd, but for most people in the world, foreign policy is still more top of mind than, say, straight crypto issues.
Yeah.
And
I agree. I hate it, but you're right. I agree.
Yeah. And so from my perspective, if it's possible to continue to provide value in an area in which I know something, and at the same time be able to start really massaging the entry of crypto, then that's probably the most effective way to do it. Now, having said that, stepping back, I think for Vice President Harris and for most people who would be serving in a potential administration, there are no strangers to tech. And one of the things that I always remind crypto people of is if you are a consequential industry within DC, then you have a playbook for both parties. And within the Republican Party, I think crypto is very clear on what their playbook is. But for the Democratic Party, I would say the angle that is going to be most effective for you is really around the technology story. So big tech has been in bed with the Democratic Party for a very long time. And I think that the DNC likes to pride itself as very cosmopolitan, very progressive and forward thinking. And so the tech angle is your most fruitful angle. And for Vice President Harris in particular, she's from the California Bay Area. She's grown up in the tech scene. And honestly, a lot of her earliest political backers are all in tech. So she is highly supportive of this. As a senator, she spearheaded a lot of initiatives to further digitize the government as well. So I think that there's definitely a play that crypto can make here. But, if I can sort of plug Saga's role in this, one of the things that I have always insisted upon at Saga is in order for crypto, for Web3 to really make it, we have to have broader cultural resonance. That is how we get to mainstream, is that we are able to be mentioned on, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel. These are late night shows in the States or morning talk shows or whatnot.
Bingo.
And you don't necessarily have to be, completely bland and boring in order to make it into mainstream. You can be edgy, but you have to resonate with the broader culture. And the people who hold the keys to that are four demographics: millennials, Gen Z, women, minorities.
Yep.
These are the demographics that are really the bedrock of the Democratic Party.
Yep.
And so if you can show them, hey, your core voting bloc, the people that you need to turn out in every swing state out there, that is our user base, then honestly, you have your way. And I always remind people, for those of you who think that crypto is being persecuted or close to being banned by the Biden administration or by DC, just remember that there's actual legislation saying if you don't hand it over to an American company or within American control, then this app is going to be banned. Having said that, everyone's on TikTok.
Exactly.
The Harris campaign's whole media strategy is very, very
TikTok.
Yeah. Yes.
It is. So, again, I'm definitely more right wing than left wing, but her content's been fire. Like you know what I mean? And I'm not one of these like, oh, I hate that. No, I like and dislike things from both sides, but I love facts, and I don't care how right wing you are, you cannot say that she's not killing it right now on social, because she is. Some of the policy that she spoke about over the last couple of weeks, days, a little suspect, but the social stuff, 10 out of 10. Immaculate.
Yeah, no, she's on fire. She's on fire with socials. And it's something for all of us in crypto to remember is you can't be outright banned as an app and yet have every major policymaker, every major politician
Good point.
still gunning to use your app because it provides value, because it has critical mass in terms of adoption. And I think for crypto, that's what we need to focus on, is getting users in here. Because once you have the users, you have the voters. Once you have the
Exactly.
voters, you have government. So
I love that.
that works.
And we will take a deep dive into Saga. It's just, again, you don't get the opportunity often to speak with
Yeah, of course.
someone who's had the experience you have in both crypto and politics. So a couple more questions, then we'll wrap up this part of the
Yeah.
show and we'll get on to the start of the show in Saga. But you brought up a point that I never really thought about before. The reason why the Democratic Party hasn't fully adopted crypto, like you said, a different user base, different demographic,
Yeah.
if you will, who doesn't use crypto or who doesn't feel the FOMO of present day crypto. And you think the solution to that is to provide better solutions, products, services, provide better Web3 solutions to the women and everyone else on the left side who perhaps doesn't as much identify with the right. Is that, if I'm on the right page here, is that sort of the playbook in order to actually get the Democratic Party to onboard and fully accept crypto?
Well, I mean, you notice in the cross-section of demographics that I mentioned, so millennials, Gen Z, women, and minorities, millennial men are definitely a part of that. Gen Z men are definitely a part of that. And so it's actually a pretty broad demographic base. But my point is this, is I would say that the kinds of consumer products that really focus on those four core demographics have a very different look and feel and branding from crypto. So when you look at the major brands that are just like rock solid, everyone wants to be associated with them, whether it's the Nikes of the world, the Apples, the Nvidias, the A24s, et cetera. They just resonate with this entire group, men and women alike.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the broader point that I'm driving at, is you need to get to a point where you have that sort of broad-based appeal. And then I promise you, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, you're going to use products from these brands anyway. You're going to give a lot of credibility to these brands. And so that's really the war that we need to fight, is how do we make sure that we have that broader appeal? And I think that honestly, for a lot of people who are more Republican leaning, especially those who are more Republican leaning because of the crypto issue, they want the same thing, which is we need to get to mass adoption. And, mass adoption, like getting 50% of the country or 30% of the country is one thing. But we would like to get to more, obviously. So I think when it comes to the Democratic Party, as is the case with many things in crypto, this would probably be a familiar message to a lot of people. It is about controlling the narrative and changing the conversation. I think so far there has been maybe a little too much emphasis on tribalism within crypto, is that if you are for us, then we are for you. And so far the party that has been vocally for us is the Republican Party, and therefore we are for the Republicans. Everything else does not matter. I would go a lot broader than that. I mean, in the end, crypto is for crypto. I think that's what we need to remember.
The one thing, it's not my issue, it's not my one issue per se, but I just don't understand why there isn't even just a minuscule want or need, perhaps, from the Democratic Party to at least be like, hey, we're going to at least give this a chance. And maybe that has been said. Maybe I don't follow enough left-wing news. I do. I try to get, a multitude of outlets from each side, but that's my only, what's good there, Does that make sense? Or do you think it's part of the stance to be like, hey, and you said this in the first 3 minutes of the show, there's bigger fish to fry. Is it just not a big enough fish to fry right now?
Yeah. I mean, that's the truth of it. And I mean, it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. But I think the issue is this. So the Harris campaign has come out with a few statements that she is more than happy to sit down with leaders in crypto to understand how better to service the crypto industry, to make sure that America is ultimately the winner in crypto. So all those statements have been made. The problem is this. It definitely does not go as far as what the Trump campaign has said in terms of how a potential administration would be supporting crypto, and he personally would be supporting crypto. She is not personally close to a lot of the crypto establishment. And so there's definitely a difference in level of engagement there. And I think when that happens, at least from what I've been seeing within the crypto community, the feeling is, well, the Republicans are genuine about it, whereas the Democrats are being completely disingenuous. And they're just saying this because they don't want to be iced out from the crypto vote, but they don't really actually care about crypto. And what I would say is this, that in the end, you have to step back and ask why is either party saying what they're saying? I think what the Republican Party has identified is that crypto, despite the state of the markets right now, still has some money in it. And fundraising has been a struggle for the Trump campaign for this entire election cycle. Whereas for Democrats, no such struggles. And so they're not looking to crypto as a revenue source, put it that way, for this campaign. They are looking at it more or less like a very niche tech issue where there are some people they're aware who feel very passionately about it in those core demographics that they care about. However, is it one of those like overarching difference makers for the campaign? I don't think we've risen to that level yet. So, as is the case with many things, you follow the money. I think the crypto contributions have been very helpful to the Trump campaign. I don't think that the Harris campaign is really hungering for any of that. And that's where you see a lot of the dichotomy coming from, unfortunately.
Well said. That was an electric primer, and what a way to start the show, folks. Literally, we just got the crypto's political playbook. Huge shout out to Rebecca for making this happen. Speaking of shout outs, we got to take a quick break and give a huge shout out to Prime XVT, longtime friend and sponsor of the show. And when we get back, we are going to jump into Saga. Cannot wait. Until then, huge shout out to Prime XVT, longtime friends of CryptoNews.com and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News podcast. We love Prime XVT as they offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet, you can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XVT is also running an exclusive promo for listeners of the Crypto News pod. Use the promo code CryptoNews50 to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that is CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Now back to the show with Rebecca. Let's jump right into it. Give me the elevator pitch on Saga, and then we will get into the fun stuff here.
Absolutely. So Saga is a layer one to launch layer ones. And what that means is that we allow developers to automatically get onto their own dedicated block space, which we call chainlets. All of these chainlets speak to one another, so the system infinitely scales. You should have as many layer ones supporting your application as you need. We are also costless on the front end. We do not believe in charging gas to the end user.
Yes.
And we are fully interoperable. So not just interoperable amongst ourselves and our chainlets, but we are fully interoperable with other ecosystems as well. So no surprise, given our emphasis on scale and on usability, that we are highly focused on consumer applications, particularly in gaming and entertainment. We currently have about 380 projects building on us. 80% of that is gaming. And that is by design. We have deliberately gone after that sector in a big way. We just got back from Gamescom, which is the largest gaming conference of the world. It takes place in Germany at the end of August, and everyone does their big reveals here. So no different for us. We revealed our first 3 flagship titles at Gamescom. They are Angelic, Lusa, and God's Legacy. So super excited about that. There will be more coming out in the fall, winter. That's a little bit more about Saga.
I love it. So, okay, the big, I'm a big catchphrase guy, like, know, a nice way to distill hundreds or thousands of words into one little bite-sized nugget. You guys have an electric nugget, an L1 to launch L1s.
Yes.
I've never heard 360 plus episodes. I'm an absolute degenerate, spend way too much time on crypto Twitter. I've never heard of an L1 to launch L1s until you guys. What was the need with this? Was it maybe as cliche or as front of mind as it appears, in the fact that it's really friggin' difficult to launch L1s and the infra is an absolute just nightmare. It's nightmare fuel in the purest sense. And this is the solution. Was that sort of how it came to fruition?
Yeah. So honestly, the co-founding team, when we got together a couple years ago, we wanted to solve the developer problem in crypto. And we were looking at monolithic L1s like Ethereum, Solana, classic examples, and the scalability problem there. And on the other hand, we looked at something like Cosmos, for instance, where you can always have your own L1, but to stand one up manually is usually a years-long process. And so neither solution was great for developers. And so we wanted to give developers the best of both worlds, which is that you are building on an L1. And so you maintain that composability among smart contracts, you maintain that interoperability amongst the ecosystem, but at the same time, you can scale out to your own dedicated block space. We obviously had considered the roll-up route. We had considered, doing single sequencer-based solutions. But the reason why an L1 has the level of functionality that it does is that it is a fully decentralized system. And with that level of security and decentralization, it just opens up a lot more possibilities within crypto, particularly around bridging and around customizability of the block space. So that's how we landed on this particular product. And honestly, especially when we started to talk to more games and their ambitions and the kind of user volume that they were hoping to see, even one chain was going to get killed if they really hit their peak in terms of user traffic. And so it became obvious to us that if we were going to do scaling right, that people would need as many L1s as possible, not as many rollups, app chains, side chains, none of that, as
L1s.
many L1s.
You got to own it from front to back. You got to own the whole thing.
Yep, absolutely.
And gaming, Web3 gaming is the bread and butter of you and Saga, of course. Was it always that way? Was there was that a pivot perhaps? And a quick segue to that, I'd love if you could talk about the state of Web3 gaming as a whole as well on the second half of that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so we were about gaming and entertainment from the beginning. And that came about really because we asked ourselves as a startup, who badly needs this infrastructure? Who badly needs this product? Because as a startup, that's the question you have to answer. A lot of people would find benefit from this, including DeFi applications, but who badly needs it? And for gaming and entertainment, this is really existential. I would say that most games feel that unless they can scale and unless you take away design constraints like gas, they're never going to be good games. And so they badly need this kind of infrastructure. And that's how we really honed in on that segment. But as we started to think through, okay, how do we contribute to the broader crypto ecosystem? How do we get consumers in here? It really became clear that gaming and entertainment was the way to go. Now, we have come out with something we call the liquidity integration layer, or LITL, and that is our DeFi layer. So we are still a layer one, which means that you can do all manner of financial applications on here. And with LITL, I mean, it's quite special in that we are taking a cut of liquidity as opposed to charging gas. So we have an entirely new way of generating revenue for the protocol. In terms of the state of Web3 gaming, so it's very interesting because I think Saga in many ways sort of hit the timing, knock on wood, but I think in many ways we hit the timing. And that is that we are early enough such that we are really finding out what are the viable models for Web3 gaming and then taking those forward. But we came later than the first generation of Web3 gaming chains or Web3 gaming protocols, such that a lot of the things that were done back then that are probably not as effective now, we have learned from all those examples. So at Saga, I mean, maybe because a lot of us come from a gaming and entertainment background, we understand what it takes to make it in gaming and entertainment industries. And you hear this probably quite a lot, which is that games have to be fun. They do have to be fun. But what does that actually mean? It means that first and foremost, you have to bring the entertainment value. And if you're really serious about it, that means that the first questions you answer are not around tokenomics. They are not around NFT floor value. They are not around any sort of these, financial instruments. It's going to be around the player experience. And when you celebrate player experience, then you're going to celebrate the creativity of the game developers. And so at Saga, in addition to really being very developer-centric in terms of how we've architected our protocol, at the same time, we took the additional step of standing up a publishing house, which is Saga Origins. And every game needs a publisher. every game needs a good publisher. And for us, we felt that our games really deserved a proper go-to-market, and that's something that we could provide them with. It is a publishing house that has a very strong creative point of view. So we always say we need games that are provocative, expansive, uncompromising. That's what defines a Saga game.
I like that.
And what that means is we do get a lot of provocative content. Oftentimes it does tend to be, RPGs or shooter games, open world games, basically games that have big maps and have the ability for users to add to the content, for player DAOs and UGC to be stood up as well. But you're seeing the new generation of Web3 gaming come about. And I think that it's a great time to be in this space. I think a lot of people were discouraged earlier this year because games that had taken 2-3 years to make, which is the average time that it takes for a game to be made, that they were coming to market, maybe not hitting the market at the right time. Maybe their token wasn't doing too well. Maybe the game itself just wasn't too fun to play. And so it's just been a series of flops. And obviously for any industry, it's very, very hard to watch that happen. But I think that with what we're doing, what some other protocols are doing in this space as well, we are moving Web3 gaming into a completely new direction. And it's happening at a time when gaming itself is also in a moment of transition. And so I'm incredibly excited by what's going to happen later this year, heading into 2025. But I would say Web3 gaming, the way that we think it's going to play out ultimately is completely different from what's come before.
Completely agree. That was a great little rip you just had there. I remember in 2021, Rebecca, when, the pod first started, I'd have guests on the show, incredible people who have built AAA, 9-figure revenue games, some billion-dollar revenue founders coming on the show, and they were candid. Hey, Matt, we're doing our NFTs right now to raise money. But again, that was the playbook back in the day. And this will take 2 to 3 years. And now these, the 2 to 3 years is up and there's 500 DAUs. Like, that's not going to move the needle. My question to you is the importance and power of streaming.
Yeah.
I'm a 95. I think I'm like the last. I think Gen Z starts in 97 or 98, and I think 95 might be the last year for millennial. So I'm a millennial. I just missed the whole streaming thing and all that. I don't watch any streamers, but I see their shit on my, whether it's TikTok or Twitter. They still come up on all their stuff, and the power that they have for games is absolutely insane now. So a bit of a 2-3 part question. One, why hasn't anyone gone all in on a crypto-based streaming platform? Because I feel like that'd be so easy. Micropayments, boom, you're in one currency and it's just micropayments right back to the creator, the streamer. And 2, when do you think Web3 games will actually pop off, and what kind of impact will streaming have on that?
Yeah. So 2 very, very different questions, getting at 2 very different aspects of how influencers and content creators ultimately play within the gaming industry. So with respect to your first question, Matt, I think the reason why there hasn't been really any platforms that are specific to Web3 gaming, so no Steam of Web3, for instance, or no Twitch of Web3, et cetera, is that really I would put it this way. There's not a whole lot of need for Web3 to have its own dedicated platform. Certainly not enough need such that we would do away with the network that's been built into these other platforms already. And so, why not get your game onto Steam? Why not just use Twitch for streaming?
It's best distribution there. No point in creating something new. Gotcha.
Exactly. You've got a great distribution channel to the extent that you want anything to happen in crypto. The project has ways of making sure that the degens and the more crypto native community that they're able to participate in the game in a very crypto native way. But it's not something that really justifies the existence of a new platform, I would say.
Gotcha.
And I think that's probably going to be true for a little while. Now, with respect to your second question, influencers or creators are a key part of any sort of game go-to-market. For Saga Origins, it's really a 3-part process that we take a game through. And the first one is creating game awareness through influencers, creators, and media. And then we get into user acquisition. Then we get into creating the metagame so that we actually make your community quite sticky for all the gamers. But the first part is bringing in the streamers. And I think that hopefully going to start to see a very interesting dynamic happening here because a lot of the sort of new media, if you will, that came up over the last few years, whether it's streaming in terms of streaming services like a Netflix or a Peacock or HBO Max, et cetera, or influencer streaming, influencers and content creators really taking over how things are distributed and marketed. That is all shifting as well. And I think for influencers and creators over the last couple of years, particularly as gaming has slowed down a little bit as an industry, they're trying to find new ways to make money, right? And as is true for so many things in media and tech, is that a lot of the attention goes to, like, say, the top 10, top 20% of projects. And so as an influencer, I think it used to be the case that it's better for you to just play Counter-Strike, even though there are like a million other influencers playing Counter-Strike, right? But what is it that most gamers want to see? Is like they want to see someone play Counter-Strike. Okay.
Good point. You got a good point there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what, this is, the 20th Italian chef doing a cooking show, but Italian food's popular. So
it slaps. People want what slaps.
Yeah. Exactly. But I think given how saturated the space has become, people are starting to go more towards indie, which I think makes the space way more interesting. So you are looking to discover alpha. You are looking for that originality, that experimentation in the game titles. And you're also looking for honestly, influencers and creators who may not be on the radar of agencies yet,
like the micro influencers.
Millions of followers. Yeah, exactly. So I think the discovery engine is sort of starting anew, which is super exciting to see. And one of the things that we always give Web3 influencers and creators credit for, especially in gaming, is that consistently they do play the newer games. So they're not like, I'm going to sit on my butt and only play Shrapnel, only play Illuvium, or only play like, these big titles that everyone already knows about. I am going to experiment with smaller games. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's very healthy for the whole ecosystem. But influencers and creators, it's huge. But pro tip to people out there who are working with influencers and creators, so it's slightly different from how you would potentially work with a KOL, in that the most effective brand partnerships are the ones in which you actually have some sort of genuine connection with a talent. So if the way that this, guy or girl is talking about your project seems really passionate and very genuine, then that's probably going to be a great partnership. If it feels like, hey, they're not really vibing with your brand, or you keep telling them this is our messaging, this is really the look and feel that we're going for, but they're not quite getting it, or vice versa, then maybe not something that you want to pursue, no matter what the numbers are, what the distribution channel size is.
Yeah, good call.
So definitely, be wise when you curate your stable of talent. But they're here to stay. They are a media staple at this point, probably more so than traditional media, especially for gaming.
100%. And you can sniff that out now. Like 10 years ago, when the whole sort of, not creator economy, but a lot of, KOLs and influencers sort of started to pop off, we were also new to it. But like we've seen tens of thousands of these nonsense blah 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 blah. So like now you can sniff that out. You can see it through your phone. It's true though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it doesn't matter what it's for, whether it's gaming, whether it's beauty, food, you name it. When someone's just there to collect their bag and F off, or when they actually give a shit about the product. You can tell 100 times out of 100.
Oh, absolutely. It's so apparent. And it is still the case that authenticity is your calling card for anything media related right now, which is great. I mean, honestly, in many ways, this is something that Gen Z taught all of us in media, is when you make it too polished, when you make it too high production value, it's just not believable anymore.
Keep it raw.
And it's very hard for people to really connect with. So the authenticity is a big part. Certainly what we do, what all of our game developers do, all the influencers that we work with. I mean, we're incredibly lucky to have people who really know how to do it right and connect with their audiences. But streaming is, it's huge. It's only going to get bigger, I think.
It is. The Gen Zers freaking love it. My, oh my.
Yeah.
Rebecca, what an episode. Really appreciate this. Had an absolute blast. Any news before you let us go? Any Saga news next couple of days, weeks, months, anything like that?
Yeah. So I would say that, couple major things that we're focusing on. One is that a liquidity layer that I mentioned. So the liquidity integration layer, little, is going to really be coming out implemented over the course of the next 2-3 months. But in terms of how we are completely changing how a protocol ultimately generates revenue from activity on the chain, that's going to come out very, very shortly. So it is a completely new way in which we solve liquidity fragmentation. And I think for any scaling solution out there, this is absolutely necessary to make sure that you don't make yourself irrelevant by not having healthy liquidity on your system. So that's a huge beat at Saga, is obviously the arrival of DeFi in this ecosystem. And then honestly, as big as our game reveals were at Gamescom, even bigger ones this fall. We are very, very title and game creator centric at Saga. And so a lot of the titles that we have coming out heading into 2025, I think will be incredibly exciting for people. And a lot of Web2 coming into this space as well. So it's just a really thrilling time.
And last thing, before you let us go, please let us know where listeners can find you personally and of course, Saga online and on socials.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me personally, I am just at Becca Liao. That's my Twitter handle. And then in terms of the Saga Twitter handle, it's Saga XYZ with a double underscore at the end. Twitter is usually the best way to find us. But if you go to our website, saga.xyz, then you will be able to find all of our socials, including our Discord, Telegram, our TikTok, our Insta, our YouTube as well. So yeah, look forward to hearing from all of you.
I love it. I just looked at Twitter again. I don't know how I'm not following you. You've been, since we arranged this 3-4 weeks ago, you've been living on my For You page, but I'm not following you. The new X thing, I spend too much time on the For You page and I'm constantly trying to clear it up.
Yeah.
They do push some good shit, but I'm also getting a lot of nonsense, But part of me likes it better than the following. Anyways, that's a me problem. I got to fix that. But Rebecca,
the algorithm is figuring things out. Yeah,
it is. But you do need to, you got to fine tune it a bit yourself. You got to at least block the nonsense and cut out some keywords. But this present day Twitter is, I think I do like it better than Twitter a couple of years ago. So anyways, Rebecca, what an episode. Really appreciate you coming on. Again, this was such a treat, especially with the politics playbook at the beginning, especially as a Canadian who thinks he knows a lot about it, but clearly doesn't know shit about shit. This was truly a great episode. Really appreciate it and can't wait to have you on for round 2.
Thanks so much, Matt. It's great to be on. Really fun conversation. And I'll see you next time.
Love it. Folks, what an episode with Rebecca Liao, CEO of Saga. She was absolutely on fire today. She literally gave us crypto's political playbook, talked about everything about launching an L1 for L1s, Web3 gaming, blockchains empowering developers, Web3 entertainment, Saga's new liquidity integration layer, Saga Origins, the publishing arm of Saga, and a little bit more as well. Folks, what an epi. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please do subscribe. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking of the team, love you guys. Eustace, you are the man. And back to the listeners, keep on growing those bags and keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Love you guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao.